It's polling season again, and perhaps not surprisingly, there are questions about polling and even some skepticism in certain quarters. Well, CBS News is launching our 2020 Battleground Tracker this weekend. Our polling unit will give us some insight into what's on voters' minds and describe the race in each state. CBS News Director of Elections and Surveys, Anthony Salvanto, joins me now. Anthony, so great to see you. I love seeing the Battleground Tracker graphic behind you because now we are starting to rev up. So as we get ready for the CBS Battleground Tracker, what is it that people should be watching for in the polls this year?
Hey, Elaine, and yeah, I like that description. It feels like polling season. And we are working on a few now. So we are working on a few for Sunday. The Battleground Tracker project is designed to give you the snapshots of what's happening in all 50 states. And we'll concentrate on a few each week, those key states that could swing the election. But the big idea, Elaine, is that this is, of course, a state-by-state race for the presidency. The Electoral College is what determines the president. I know a lot of people were reminded of that in 2016 when Hillary Clinton won the popular vote, won the national vote, but of course lost the presidency because she didn't win enough states and enough Electoral College votes, which is what counts. So what we're going to do with the Battleground Tracker is we do polls in all the states and we give you estimates in all 50 states all the time so that you can constantly see the shape of the race. And then even more importantly, even more important than sort of who's winning and losing at any given moment, is talking to tens of thousands of people and finding out what voters think. So for example, this weekend, we will be focusing on Arizona and Florida and Texas. And in particular, because of course, the coronavirus spike in those places, we're asking the question, is this reshaping the presidential race? Is it shaping people's opinions? Is it changing how they might vote in those states? They've been red. They all went to Trump in 2016. We'll find out what we think is happening now, Elaine.
So in 2018, you had the polling data and the midterm election results lining up really closely. What has changed, Anthony, recently in the way that polling is conducted?
Yeah, at least two big things, Elaine. One of them is that we use more models. And by models, I mean that incorporates a lot of different information about a state. We know through millions of publicly available voter records how many people are registered to vote in a state, whether they voted before, that all-important vote history, which matters in terms of turnout. We know the demographics of each state. All of that is incorporated into our voter models and into the Battleground Tracker. And the other big thing is that no state is an island in a certain sense. Yes, it's a 50-state race, but if we see a pattern that's going on across a number of states, a particular kind of voter, for example, is moving to one candidate or the other, then you have to ask the question, is that also happening in other states? Well, we can do that with our models. The great example was in 2016 when white working class voters seemed to be swinging towards Trump. We saw that in places like Ohio and places like maybe Pennsylvania. Well, was that happening in Michigan and Wisconsin? That's a good question to ask. And what the Battleground Tracker model can do is incorporate some of that data. So you get a picture at the voter level and at the state level both, Elaine.
You know, in the midst of this pandemic, Anthony, I wonder, does turnout feel like it will be a wild card this year? Are you expecting issues with voting? How might that impact your work with the polling?
Yes, and maybe that's the most important question. Now, look, all pollsters, a lot of pundits always say, but it all comes down to turnout. But this year is different, and it's different because of what we've seen in the primaries, those late primaries where we saw voters outside of polling places, waiting in long lines and trying to cast their ballots, taking a long time to do it, or trying to switch over to vote by mail. We know that thousands, hundreds of thousands of people will try to vote by mail this year. Is that process easy? Will it be hard? We know that people want to try to vote by mail if they're concerned about getting COVID-19. All of those things will affect turnout because at the end of the day, all what we're measuring in these polls is in large part their preference, but they actually have to find a way to go and do it. And so whether they have access, whether there are enough polling places, whether there's the ability to vote by mail, all of that is going to impact this election. That will be the story of the fall, maybe election night, and quite frankly, maybe beyond if it takes a long time to count all those mail votes, Elaine.
All right, we'll be watching for that Battleground Tracker on Sunday. Anthony Salvanto, so great to see you again. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Good to talk to you. Thanks, Elaine.